I am a huge fan of Super Mario Bros. Wonder. I was blessed to have some time off from work when my dear brother gave me the game as a gift, and I absolutely consumed this game, 100%ing it in 6 days. So shoutouts to him. My mind was racing with ideas for new videos, and eventually I realized I just need to make a rapid-fire list of genius things that this game does, because there are a lot. There are many videos out there already covering cool details and Easter eggs, and while this video will cover a handful of those, I'm really approaching it from a game design perspective. There are so many brilliant game design techniques packed into this game, so I wanted to highlight just how smart it is. Be warned that full spoilers for Super Mario Bros. Wonder are in this video. If you want to go in blind, go play the game first, then come back and we can compare notes. If you're still here, we've got to go pretty fast, so buckle up. Here are 50 genius things in Super Mario Bros. Wonder. The game features several musical levels where enemies and objects in the environment will perform a remarkably well-choreographed song, and some levels even reward you for keeping rhythm. How do you play to the beat? By jumping, of course. The way that rhythm is utilized in some levels is really smart because it's not just an automated roller coaster where you have to play an exact way, but you are still rewarded for keeping a beat with your actions. This fundamentally changes how you play a level. The game is built with completionists in mind, conveniently tracking criteria such as which Wonder Seeds and 10 flower coins you found. But a level won't earn a green checkmark unless you've truly 100% completed it. Meaning, if it looks like you found everything, you're actually missing a secret exit. This is a great way to hint that the player hasn't found every secret without spoiling it before they've had a chance to experience the level. Speaking of secret exits, they aren't new to the Mario series, but they are consistently clever in this game. Some of them give you a clear hint that there's something more to find, like some of the early ones, or a later level where multiple exits is kind of the gimmick. But others are very well hidden, and when you finally figure it out, they are presented wonderfully. Power-ups are one of the most effective mechanics that Nintendo uses to add variety and depth to a new Mario game. And Mario Wonder's Elephant Fruit is one of the most creative power-ups in the series. It's unique in that it makes your character larger than a standard power-up. Mario levels are built on a grid. A typical block is 1 by 1 tile, for example. Traditionally, a power-up would make your character 1 tile wide by 2 tiles tall, and all levels are designed around that. But the elephant is 2 tiles wide by 3 tiles tall, which sounds like it would break the Mario formula a bit too much, but surprisingly, it works perfectly. The developers did some clever things, like making the elephant automatically hunch over when walking through a 2-tile high opening, so the elephant never feels restricted or awkward to control. In fact, they lean into it by letting you hit more blocks at once or even running over 2-tile wide gaps. These small considerations make the elephant power an absolute blast to control. Some fans, myself included, were curious how the next 2D Mario game would one-up, pun intended, previous games in the series, considering we can make our own levels now with the Mario Maker games. How do you do more when players can already do it themselves? Say hello to Wonder Flowers. Other than minigames, every level in the game has a Wonder Flower that turns it on its head, sometimes completely rewriting the rules of the game. If Mario Wonder just had really fun power-ups and solid level design, it would have been a great game, but this mechanic is almost impossible to reproduce in a simple level editor like Mario Maker because each level gets its own bespoke mechanic. It would be easy to simply list each of the new enemy types in this game because it really did introduce a huge amount of them, but I'm going to limit myself to just a handful of the more striking examples. One of my personal favorites are the popcorn enemies found in a lava level. They start out as kernels that simply walk forward, but as soon as they touch a hot surface, they immediately pop and start jumping back and forth. You can use water to cool down hot platforms, which prevents them from popping, making them a lot easier to handle. Not only is this an adorable and original idea for an enemy that works perfectly within the ages-old trope of the Mario lava level, but the level is built for interesting counterplay that alters how you engage with the enemy. One of my new favorites for sure. Similar to Mario Odyssey, you can collect both gold and purple coins, which have different uses. Gold coins work like usual, collecting 100 gets you a 1-up, but the purple flower coins are actually used as currency to buy badges and other goodies. The evolution of the traditional coin system into an upgrade system is seamless and balanced really well, and the level designers use both to highlight key jumps in a level. Similarly, Wonder Buds are a smart, reusable, and thematically relevant way to add some easy spice to a level's design. Simply make contact with one, either directly or indirectly, to generate a new path, coins, or other goodies. Even though how they're implemented can always be different, interacting with them is always immediately understandable. The new Bubble Flower is one of my personal favorite examples of thematic synergy in game design. It lets you shoot bubbles, with characters doing a cute little blowing animation, so naturally it makes sense to make it a flower like other power-ups that let you shoot projectiles. It actually floats away when it appears because, you know, it's in a bubble. It can capture enemies in a bubble, and you can bounce off of it because it's a bouncy bubble. Taking the list of everything it can do mechanically and considering how the bubble visual ties it all together is simply wonderful. Mario games have always aimed for the delicate balance between deep, challenging gameplay and broad accessibility. Mario Wonder probably handles this better than any other game in the series, and frankly, better than most games out there, largely thanks to the badge system. Throughout your adventure, you earn badges that help you in different ways, and some of them even give you new techniques that your character can do. This allows the player's moveset to expand as they get better at the game, but they're all optional, meaning that the complexity of the controls never increases needlessly and never without player consent. But if a player does want to make the game easier, or even more challenging, there are several ways they can do just that according to their preference.
Onward and upward.
The talking flowers add a ton of personality for this game, though maybe they aren't for everyone. Thankfully, the game gives players the option to turn off their voice, and if you do, well...
Oh, was it something I said?
Come on, that's pretty great. Speaking of talking flowers, one level allows you to enter a certain room early if you manage to break this wall before collecting the Wonder Flower. And if you walk inside, you get scolded.
How'd you even get in here?
Ugh, that ruins everything.
You have to do things in a certain order.
These might just be cool little Easter eggs, but it's a wonderful example of what it means to really think of everything that a player can do in your game, and rewarding them for trying it out. Mario Wonder is full of truly inspired takes on classic Mario tropes, with one of the best examples being in the second level, where you meet trotting piranha plants. Typically, piranha plants are a stationary enemy, being bound to a pipe, but it's a surprise to see one poke its head out only to climb out and walk away. Not only that, but this level makes heavy use of these marimba blocks that play different notes as you or a piranha plant walk across them. And of course, anyone who's played this level knows just how far they push this concept. It's this kind of synergy between different mechanics and themes that elevate a game from being just good to wonderful. Also, I would pay a concerning amount of money to have a melon piranha skin in Super Smash Bros. Another one of this game's particularly smart enemy designs, Mumsies, are seen in several levels. Not only is it just plain fun to grab them and watch them unwind, but they can be different heights, so they can create an interesting layered design in a level. And while jumping on one doesn't defeat them, it does stun them, giving you easier access to their weak point. There are even more considerations that went into realizing the feeling of controlling a large, powerful character with the elephant. For example, there's a certain enemy in several levels called a Shova, who are always looking for something to push around like pipes or platforms. You can actually push these same objects from the other side, and depending on which form your character is in, you'll push at different strengths, with the small form actually being weaker than a Shova, most other forms being a bit stronger, and the elephant form actually overpowers them immediately. An elephant can even defeat a Shova by stomping on it once rather than the usual 3 times because of its massive weight. It would be easy for the badge system to make levels a little too easy, but I found that more often than not, changing badges to fit a certain level also means you have to adjust your strategy to complete it. Sure, some badges are more helpful in specific courses, but you still have to figure out how to use it effectively. This is because the badges are carefully designed to supplement your moveset but never be a dominant strategy. There are several badge challenges in the game that act as tutorials for new badges. Even though they are fairly fun levels in their own right, they aren't supposed to be the same as a full level, and the point is to allow you to experiment with a new way of controlling your character. Because of this, you actually don't lose any lives if you lose in one of these levels, allowing the player to mess around with the controls to their heart's content, while also learning a new mechanic. Online play in Mario Wonder is a bit different from what many people expected, but I'd be lying if I said it wasn't really cool to see a bunch of other players exploring the same course alongside me as we communicate through gestures and help each other out. The camaraderie feels good. It's typical for a new side-scrolling Mario game to introduce new power-ups, but especially a new take on the flight power-up, like the Tanuki suit in Mario 3, the cape in Mario World, or the flying squirrel suit in Mario U. Few games deviate from this trend, but Mario Wonder is one of them. Instead, you can find several abilities within the badge system, some of which are inspired by techniques from older games. This lets you play the game with a diverse selection of cool techniques, or trade them off for other effects like a coin magnet or boosted run speed. Worlds in Mario games have been pretty by the numbers over the years. Hills, desert, ocean, sky, lava, etc. Mario Wonder is similar, but went deeper. Each world actually evolves as you progress. And levels contain different biomes and environments even within one world. For example, the first world starts with a typical lush meadow, but soon you make your way to the mainland, exploring a vast savanna with a spooky swamp to the south and a mountain to the north. One level even transitions into a snow level as you climb up. It's no secret that the presentation of the past few side-scrolling Mario games has gotten a bit stale. Mario Wonder, thankfully, moves in the polar opposite direction with a much greater level of animation variety that adds not only visual clarity, but wonderful charm. Your typical warp pipe animation now has an elephant wiggling his legs trying to fit through, or a Goomba whose eyes get wide as he realizes his fate. You could easily make a whole video just on the new animations, and the crazy thing is, most of these animations are for interactions that have existed since Mario on the NES. Another brilliant new power-up is the Drill Mushroom. Besides how freaking cute it is, it also invites you to think about levels differently than any Mario game before. If you pay attention to the ceilings of certain levels, you can find hidden routes that would be inaccessible otherwise. Copycats were used very heavily in World 3. Because they jump when you do, it forces you to think about level design differently. What's really cool is when you can actually use them to hit blocks that you couldn't normally reach on your own. This isn't technically a new feature to Mario, but it's incredibly valuable in Wonder. The game has a huge explorable map with dozens and dozens of courses to play, and it can take a while to get from one end of the map to the other. Thankfully, while you can just walk, there is also a convenient menu that lets you quickly scroll between worlds and immediately fast travel to any course that you've already played. Thank goodness. In a change from previous Mario games, players do not collide with each other when playing simultaneously anymore. This was definitely the right choice for this particular game in my opinion. Some of the levels are just a bit too tightly designed to support the chaos that comes from 4 people trying to rush through a level together. Though I'd be lying if I said I don't also appreciate that chaos. Mario Maker 2 in local co-op is wild. Item swap badges ensure that you will always transform into a certain form regardless of which power-up you actually use. This is a super smart idea that allows for easy experimentation with a specific power-up, or it's just convenient if you have a favorite that you want to keep using. Some levels will provide subtle hints that there's more than meets the eye. A great example is the red pipe in the foreground of Piranha Plants on Parade. You see this pipe briefly, but the standard path never presents a red pipe for you to enter. But sure enough, there is a secret exit towards the end, making good on that initial promise. This is a prime example of how to hint at a secret without giving too much away, and every genre can learn from this. Most Mario games have a timer to incentivize the player to finish a level quickly, but Mario Wonder bucks that trend, allowing the player to take as much time as they want to explore, save for specific sections of course. This makes a lot of sense for this game, with the huge amount of secrets, alternate routes, and unique mechanics, plus a general invitation to experiment. Personally, I'm very thankful. The Bubble Flower is brilliant aesthetically, but also mechanically. Not only can it be used to defeat enemies from a distance, but it lets you make your own temporary platforms that you can jump off of once before they burst. This gives an incredible flexibility to how you can approach levels. What really ties it together is how you can actually shoot it farther if you build up momentum first. It just feels great. One of my favorite features is the expert badges. These actually change how your character works fundamentally, meaning it gives a whole new way to play the game for players who already conquered it. They're typically a double-edged sword, like how one expert badge lets you run really fast and gives you fat coyote time, but you actually can't stop running. It lets you do more, but it's a challenge to master it. Most would agree that Mario isn't a combat-focused experience, but the KO arena levels are handled very well. These have you try to wipe out rooms of enemies as fast as you can, getting rewarded for faster times. These levels really play to the strengths of 2D Mario, as the level layouts are perfectly suited to maximize what makes these enemies interesting. Way to leverage your mechanics, Nintendo! The level select interface got a huge makeover. When you approach a level on the world map, not only is there a cool photo that helps distinguish levels from each other, but they even have a difficulty rating to help inform you of what you're getting yourself into. Most of the harder levels are placed in a group with easier options available, so you get to choose how challenging your journey is. One simple but crucial aspect of the game is the simple fact that it feels wonderful to play. A platformer is defined by its movement, and this game feels like it was made by industry veterans. This gets even more impressive when you consider the badge system that lets you change how your character controls. It still feels great no matter what. There are even new features like being able to adjust your descent in a ground pound or crawl under small gaps. Alright, last time I'm talking about the elephant. The game's use of water was brilliant. If you come into contact with water while in elephant form, you will automatically store some in your trunk, and you can spray it 3 times before having to fill up again. Now, this sounds like it might be kind of a lesser used idea, but what's so smart about it is just how often you can make use of this ability in a variety of settings. It's an excellent lesson in thematic synergy and game design. The game takes place in the Flower Kingdom, and collecting wonder flowers and wonder seeds is one of the primary objectives. This setting means that there are flowers everywhere, and a lot of them need to be watered, which the elephant power lets you do, rewarding you with some extra goodies. In most other games, this might have been a really undercooked mechanic, only used in a handful of levels, but Mario Wonder manages to make use of it throughout the whole game. Whether you're hydrating in an otherwise parched desert, cooling off hot platforms, or watering the locals who also happen to be flowers, this mechanic was perfect for this game. There's a badge called Auto Mushroom that automatically gives you a super mushroom when the level starts if you would otherwise be in small form. This is super useful, pun intended, for levels where you try multiple times, especially if you know there's a power-up early on. It might seem like it makes things a bit too easy, but by being tied to the badge system, it means you actually sacrifice having an extra ability for the rest of the level. A big payout up front in exchange for a more challenging level ahead. Mario Wonder is a very accessible game, and that starts when you pick your character. It has the highest number of playable characters in any Mario game to date, and a few of them are even flat out invincible, in case you want the fun of exploring levels without stressing about winning or losing so much. Personally, I definitely prefer the classic style, but this choice single-handedly makes this a much better option when I play with a group of friends. The world map is pretty big, and there are a lot of levels crammed in there, but progression is largely tied to the number of wonder seeds you've found, and you don't need every seed to progress. This means the game's pacing is incredibly flexible. If you want to play everything you come across as soon as you find it, you can. If you want to move to the next world as quickly as possible, you can do that too. Personally, there were still a handful of levels that I had skipped after beating the final level, so it was really nice to go back and find a few new levels waiting for me. And I got to check out a new world without having to finish a prior one. There is a shocking amount of variety in this game's levels, and no one mechanic overstays its welcome. Some of them are seen a few times, but they're consistently used within a different context. That makes it impossible for it to feel redundant. Instead, they build off an established concept to provide something new. Very few games do this quite as well as Mario Wonder. Remember those rhythm levels from earlier? There's actually a badge that applies the rhythm mechanic to any level. Not only is this a wonderful example of good old-fashioned goofiness, but it really does change how you play. Go ahead and try it, you'll see what I mean. Minigames and bonus levels aren't strictly new in Mario, but Mario Wonder really refines the idea with things like scavenger hunts, combat challenges, and break time levels with unique objectives. They do exactly what they're supposed to, give a mental break from playing through levels, allowing players to engage with the game in a unique way every now and then. This does wonders for the game's pacing, breaking up an otherwise monotonous, though still good, structure. And of course, they're optional. Tailies are another brilliant enemy design. The way you engage with them is different from anything else in the game. You can grab their tails while jumping, and they pull you back up and fling you away, which of course is super fun, but they also drop spike balls on top of you, meaning that you have to be considerate of how you approach, which is especially challenging when you're leaping from one Tailie to another. The drill mushroom doesn't just change how you think about the structure of the environment, but also the placement of enemies, because it actually gives you the ability to bonk them from below. Jumping on top of enemies is a Mario game's bread and butter, but now the tables have turned. If they're falling on top of you, or maybe on a platform above you, you can simply jump into them and still stay safe. I didn't expect this to be quite as satisfying as it is. Badge challenges are pretty cut and dry at first, but they're actually one of the smarter examples of game design, in my opinion. They are primarily tutorials, but the later ones are actually solid levels in their own right, while also still teaching the player more advanced applications of a badge. Plus, they expose you to badges that you may not have used so much. Not only did they make learning fun, but they also demonstrated how tutorials don't need to be exhaustive from the get-go. Great job, devs! The game's level design is excellent, and almost every level introduces a new mechanic, many of which are only seen in that one level. Obviously, implementing and teaching dozens of unique mechanics takes a ton of work, so Nintendo actually utilizes a specific method to design levels in such a way that they can teach and develop a new mechanic efficiently. This method is called Kisho Tenketsu, which they've been using on Mario games for years. I actually made a video detailing how this method works, and one level that breaks the rules just a little bit. Which brings me to one last genius enemy, Noshers. Yeah, if you saw my first Mario Wonder video, you might think I don't like these guys or the level they're in, but I never said that. In fact, I actually praised them for their concept and creativity. They actually eat blocks, coins, and even other enemies. They are super cool, though I did critique the level for breaking the Kisho Tenketsu method just a little bit, even calling the level the worst in the game, ignoring the minigames, obviously. But even what is, in my personal opinion, the worst level is still a solid level, as I state at the end of that video. Some people agree, and some don't. To me, that's the beauty of game design. No matter how much we pick it apart, at the end of the day, it impacts people differently. There's a level that's chock full of electricity traps that zap you if you touch them. So what's the Wonder Flower effect? You turn into none other than Metal Mario. And even though you're heavier moving around, you can conduct electricity, illuminating the level around you and magnetically attracting nearby coins. And of course, it plays the iconic Metal Mario theme music from Mario 64. This is an incredibly creative and thoughtful evolution of an established Mario trope that makes sense mechanically and thematically, while paying respect to what came before. Pay attention, video game industry. One smart thing about this game is actually which enemies are not in it. Almost every level in the game introduces a new enemy type, and levels are built to leverage the unique mechanics of those enemies. The developers were conscious to not throw in a bunch of enemies that wouldn't really serve the gameplay. While I would have loved to see Fire Brothers or Boomerang Brothers, instead we get loads of new enemies, all of which are great. One of the more challenging secrets to find is available if you play through a castle level while invisible. This lets you sneak into Bowser Jr.'s room and eavesdrop, a great way to reward highly skilled play. Like many Mario games before it, Mario Wonder contains an unlockable special world filled with extra challenging courses. And not only are these courses indeed tough, but they are wonderfully clever, often making use of specific wonder effects that you've seen already, but pushed to their mechanical limits. They make great use of a design space that you've already experienced, but repurposed to something really different and intense. The final level does something incredibly interesting. Spoilers, obviously. The final boss utilizes a type of platform that boosts your jump and turns you into a dangerous projectile as long as you jump in time with the rhythm. It's a cool idea, but it's also quite gutsy, because the game only introduces this new mechanic about 3 seconds before the final showdown. What's even more impressive is, it actually works. Even though this specific mechanic didn't have any time to settle before challenging you with it, the underlying concept was seen throughout the whole game. There have been several levels that ask you to jump in time with the beat, and this is just a natural extension of that. The design of the boss itself signals that you should be jumping into it, so you end up learning what is technically a new mechanic almost immediately. That is a subtle tutorial if I've ever seen one. And because I can't count, here's one more for the road. Once you beat the game, you can buy 99 lives. This is perfect for trying expert challenges like secret levels or going through previous levels with different badges to make them more challenging. Saving this option until after you've beaten the main story means that the balance isn't completely thrown off too early, but only after you've cleared your primary objective. And that is 50-ish genius things in Super Mario Bros. Wonder. If you feel like I missed something, you're right. There are way more genius things in this game, but I had to cut it off somewhere, right? I'd love if you shared your favorite details in the comments, or maybe some of the things I pointed out struck you differently. That is part of what makes art beautiful after all. Either way, I hugely appreciate you watching the video. Let me know if you'd watch more of these. This took forever to make, so maybe next time I'll do a 10 genius things and allow myself to go a little deeper on each point. I appreciate your liking, subscribing, and sharing with your posse. Remember to spread positivity and push possibility. I love you all, and God bless.